I'm really trying not to sound like super cliche because people are gonna see. I'm gonna say stuff and then people are gonna be like rolling their eyes.
No,
But
don't worry about it.
but really, it's like believe in yourself.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm super excited to be here today with Luis. It goes to McGovern. He's MS2, and yeah, I'm super excited to have you on, Luis. Thanks for coming on.
No, man, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So before we get into the nitty gritty, like everything else we're going to be talking about, I guess we can start with this. What made you want to go into medicine in the first place?
Yeah, so my personal statement, let me pull up my personal statement, which is where we basically write about this. No, so that's a really fair question. It's a really good question. I think earlier on when I was like in college and still trying to figure things out, it was a lot harder to think about an answer. But I think now that I'm in my second year of medical school, thinking back, it like clicks in a little bit more. So basically what happened is, to give you a little bit of background about myself, I'm a first generation college student. So I went to UT Austin, and I didn't really go into college thinking I wanted to do medicine. I was actually trying to do engineering. Eventually I decided that too much physics, math it was like too much. I was like, I'm not really feeling this. So I switched over to doing just biochemistry. But then I was like, what am I going to do with a biochemistry degree? Right. So I didn't know what to do with it. I ended up doing, after my junior year of college, I had the opportunity of doing a public health internship with UT Health, but it was at Brownsville. So I got to go down to South Texas. I took it. I heard about it at school. I was like, yo, I don't even know what I want to do. Maybe this is something that I might consider, that's something that I might find interesting. So I applied, I got it, and I got to go down south to Brownsville for that summer and do an internship. I was working with community health workers. I was working with epidemiologists. I got to do like a research project. It was a really cool experience, very eye-opening too. So once I was down there, I started really, I'm from Mexico. I was originally born in Mexico, and living in Mexico, I used to see a lot of people struggling with like poverty and struggling with access to healthcare and things like that. So that's something that I was very used to in Mexico. Then we moved to the United States, to San Antonio, Texas. And San Antonio, the area that I was in, everything was nicer, obviously, than what I was living in Mexico. And so just a better quality of life, I felt. And so I kind of forgot that there's people out there who had problems getting access to healthcare. I just kind of put that in the back of my head, and I didn't really think about it too much. I focused on myself and my studies and that stuff. But then getting to go down to the Valley and doing that internship really opened my eyes, because once I was down there, the Valley is a wonderful place. It's a great place, but it does, you can really see the health disparities down there. You can really see a lot of people having problems with access to healthcare. And so seeing that, and especially because the population is mostly Latino, Hispanic, so it was like seeing my own family going through these problems. You know, it was seeing all these people that had chronic conditions and weren't well educated on what they had. They didn't know what diabetes was. They didn't know hypertension and all of these other things. And so it really inspired me. I feel like at that point I was looking for like a purpose. I was looking for a career. I didn't know what to do at that point. And so I said, I saw that a lot of them didn't have doctors, and I was like, whoa, there's a gap here. We need more people. We need more doctors. We need more doctors who can relate to these individuals. My project that I did down there in the Valley, it was with frequent flyers, which is people that that go to the ED a lot, that go to the emergency department. A lot of those people were Hispanic, and when I got to talk to them, they would tell me about how they didn't have a doctor because maybe they didn't have papers, so they weren't legally here, or maybe they did, but they didn't have like a job. They didn't have the right insurance. They didn't trust doctors because they didn't look like them. They didn't look like them and things like that. So that really inspired me. I came back to UT Austin the summer after that, and I was like, I'm ready. What do I need to do? And whoa, did I find out there was a lot to be done. You know, I was like, that's crazy. So I got studying and all that stuff, but that made me, the reason why I wanted to go into medicine was those experiences that I had.
Okay. So you touched a little bit about being a first generation student. So as a pre-med or as a med student right now? What are some things that you have that you can take away from your experiences as first generation immigrant?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yeah, you can see my skin, you can tell I'm brown.
Hmm.
I'm an immigrant. If sometimes my accent like comes out a little bit more, sometimes less. So sometimes you can definitely hear that I'm not from around here.
Right.
Sometimes I can kind of like hide it a little bit. But so it's never an option. Like I've never had the option of kind of just hiding in the background. Like you can always tell who I was. And so I think there's like two sides to it, as being a first generation immigrant and being a pre-med and a medical student. I think I want to do the positive side first. Actually, no, I'm gonna do the negative side first. So obviously there's a lot of implicit bias. There's a lot of just straight up racism that people go through. And I personally have encountered actions here and there that were questionable, that I try to give, I tend to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But I've had experiences where I can definitely tell people were either making fun of me, my accent, the way I look, my background, and things like that. And so, um, yeah, that's never like a good thing to have, right? And so, it's something but it kind of helped me build my character and be proud of who I am. I think another thing was that because I'm a first generation college student and I have no family members that are anywhere near medical field. I'm actually a first generation high school student. So yeah, so my parents, I think my mom finished middle school. My dad didn't even finish elementary school. So I didn't have a lot of mentors that I could look to. I didn't have a lot of people. I didn't have a lot of connections. Um, so a lot of the questions that I had about applying to medical school or a career in medicine, it came from asking friends. So at UT Austin, I joined a pre-health organization very similar to AED. And so I joined an organization like that, and I got to make a lot of friends through that. And people who applied the year before me, they really like helped me out whenever it came down to me applying and figuring out TMD, SAS, and stuff like that. I had a family friend, actually my girlfriend's cousin, she's a nurse, and so she was able to introduce me to a doctor. But it just so happened that like I knew someone who knew someone, so it wasn't me personally having those straight connections. Also money, uh I didn't have a lot of money to prepare, so I wasn't able to take like a MCAT course or do any of these other crazy things to kind of get into medical school. So that's another thing that impacted my journey to getting to where I am now. It definitely made it more challenging being a minority student, but I mean, I'm very proud of who I am. I'm very proud of how far I made it, and so yeah, it's part of the process. But hopefully things will be getting better as we continue to fight for those students who are minority students who are first generation. On the positive side, though, being a minority student has really helped me and allowed me to make stronger connections with some of my classmates, and then also with doctors here in the area, and then most importantly with patients. So being able to speak Spanish fluently has been coming in handy a lot. It's a great way to just kind of start off a conversation with the patient and get to know them. And I feel like they're very trusting if you speak to them in their language and then you show that you care. And so it's allowed me to have and to be able to make those kinds of connections. And then also it's allowed me to kind of serve as a mentor to other undergrad students and other medical students who are also first generation, who are from a similar background. I've been able to now give back and help them with like opportunities and pointing them in the right direction and just like giving advice in general.
Okay. So I want to move on a little bit to med school now. So you started your second year. What are some of the biggest myths you think are out there about med school? Having gone through a year of it yourself and now starting MS2, what are some things that maybe have surprised you about med school?
Yeah, so I think one of the big ones is just people always say like once you're in med school, your life it's like everything is put on hold. It's just med school, right? That's all you do. And I mean that's not true. It really isn't. I mean it is a lot of content. It is a lot of work. You do study a lot. Um, but in order to be able to balance everything and have a good life and a good time going through medical school, you have to give yourself breaks. You have to give yourself time to spend with friends, family, and then just kind of do activities that you enjoy. So I think that one was one of the big ones that I remember I was scared. Again, I didn't know anybody who was a doctor. My friends were just like barely going into medical school, so they themselves were still kind of trying to figure out what they were doing. And so I had that fear of like, oh my gosh, once I get into medical school, like I'm not, I gotta drop all my hobbies. I can't do anything. I gotta just focus on getting through my classes. But that's not true. You have to find a balance. I think also there was a lot of talk. I didn't know the term. I didn't know what a gunner was. I didn't know what that meant at all until I was applying. And so then like I started hearing about like how toxic medical schools can be, or how toxic people can be. And I guess, I don't know, this might depend on the school and the program that you go to, but I can only speak from my personal experience here at McGovern. That's really not the case. That's not how people are. People are very like open to, at least my classmates are very open to sharing resources, helping each other out, pointing people in the right direction for opportunities and things like that. People are amazing. Like the amount of help that I've gotten from so many students, from some of my classmates is just so much. Like um, we, like I said, we share resources. We get pointed in the right direction. There might be people that I don't have like a personal relationship with, but just because we are classmates, they will put resources out there for the rest of us to look into, or maybe they heard like there's a doctor who's looking for people to like do research with and stuff like that. So they point us in those directions. So I really thought medical school is going to be a lot more toxic, and I'm happy that at least here I'm not experiencing that. Um, what other myths? I think for me, so one of the things that shocked me a lot, being at UT Austin is huge. So you're able to like find your group of people, like if whether it be like something based on like your sexual orientation, your political stances, your background, your ethnicity, things like that. You're able to find those groups there and have those kinds of friendships, and so you don't feel like you're alone or anything like that. You feel like you're in a big group, just because the amount of people that go to school. And I know U of H also has a lot of students. It's huge. But I think once I came to McGovern, there is only 240 of us, which is still like a large medical school compared to other classes. It's still a big class, but obviously it's not as many students as like what UT has or what U of H has. And when I came in, I looked around and it was very white. I'm just gonna straight up say it, not sugarcoated. I mean, there's definitely people from all races and all backgrounds in my class, but the overwhelming majority is white. And it's not just my medical school. I know medicine in general is still very white. And so that shocked me. I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was just expecting like things to continue to be as diverse as they were at UT for me, but it definitely wasn't. But it also, on the positive side, it allowed me to expand my horizon and like really get to meet people from other cultures and other backgrounds. And so that's the plus to that. But yeah, I think I was very surprised by how white and rich my class was in general. We're talking about like things we did over the summer, and I'll be like, I had to work, even though it was COVID. I had to like find a job and get things done. They're like, no, I like flew out to like somewhere else, and I was like, oh, I guess, yeah. I forget some people have like the time and the money and the connections to be able to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was
Hmm.
definitely very interesting.
Yeah, I mean that was definitely. I was talking to another McGovern medical student, and that was definitely something that we talked about as well. How much like less diversity there actually was than they were
Hmm.
expecting. Um, but yeah, it's also good to know that med school doesn't have to consume your life as well, because that was another common theme as well. That people, you should take breaks and make sure your mental health is good throughout the entire process. But on that note, what are some things that you maybe if you're dealing with a lot of stress or something like that, what are some things that you do to make sure that your mental health is good throughout med school?
So I'm gonna plug this thing called mindfulness. It's something that I'm very passionate about. I think a lot of people don't really think about it and don't really know much about it. But I think for me, so what happened was when I was in undergrad, when I was at UT Austin, my senior year, I was looking for, I'm about to end college. Like I'm trying to chill, I'm not trying to get too crazy with the classes I'm taking. And so I was looking for electives to take. And there was this class called mindfulness and self-compassion or something like that. And I was like, I looked it up and it had like really great reviews and easy A. Everybody was saying just like the easiest A you ever get. they only met once a week. I was like, yo, this class was meant for me. So I signed up. I signed up to take the class, not really thinking much about it. I was just like, let's see where it takes me. Let's see if it's something that's like worth my time or whatever. But I was very surprised that once I took the class, I was like, whoa, this is actually pretty amazing. So they were talking about like meditation techniques and how to deal with stress and how to deal with you know what is it, different emotions that you may be going through in your life. And so basically, to like summarize, mindfulness, for those people that don't know, it's kind of like it's a mental state in which you allow your body to kind of feel things as they're happening. So living in, quote unquote, living in the moment, really allowing yourself to um, feel what's happening, feel the emotions that you have, and not just kind of like shove them to the side because you're too busy and you got things to do, or kind of ignoring how you feel. So yeah, I mean, it sounds really cliche and weird, and I feel like people are like, of course I feel like I'm alive, I'm breathing, I'm moving. But it's like, are you really thinking about what's happening, and like why you feel the certain ways that you feel and things like that? So it's really allowed me to check in with myself, and it's helped me a lot with mental health, which is something you talk about. Medical students, there's a lot of burnout, there's a lot of stress because of like everything seems to be high stakes, even though some things are not. But I feel like the type of people that go into medicine, like everything is like super important and we have to get everything right. And so I know, so that's something that I was able to use. So one of my little things in my toolbox that I was able to pull out. So actually, when I was interviewing for medical school, this was after I graduated. So I had taken my mindfulness course. And so I like thought back to those lectures, and then I was like, time to use that stuff, like time to uh, respond rather than react, time to think about what I'm feeling, time to kind of like help myself zen and like figure out what I'm gonna do in these interviews to make sure I can get through them, and like put the best foot forward. And so mindfulness helped me a lot with getting through the interview process, and keep like my nerves calm and all that thing and all those things. And then it's also just helped me in general in medical school because, like I said, a lot of tests and a lot of moments when you feel like everything is very important and we need to make sure we're like acing everything. And then you get to medical school and then you see everybody's like really smart, and then you start to like compare yourself to others, and you get like imposter syndrome and all these things. And it's like, no, let me take a moment, let me figure out what's happening, why am I feeling this way, what can I do about it? And then that, it's come in handy so much. It's one of those things that I'm like blessing. I didn't even, I took the course just to be a procrastinator, but really it's taught me so
Right.
much. So
Oh, that's good. I also want to talk a little bit about your experience with gap years. You took some gap years. Correct me if I'm wrong.
mhm.
So, do you recommend it? How do you think it helped you? And what kind of things did you do during a gap year?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I took one gap year. I graduated in 2018, and then I started school in 2019. Um, so it's another one of those things where it's like faith. It's what got me to like take the. So I didn't want to take a gap year. I was actually really mad and really sad that I was gonna have to take a gap year. But I was like, you know what, like whatever. So I personally really love my gap year. So the reason why I had to take it was because, again, I didn't decide on going into medicine until after my junior year of college. So I was like, I don't have a lot of time. I just had time to like study to take the MCAT, and then like that was it, right? So I knew I was behind. I knew like there wasn't a lot of time to like apply for medical school, and I didn't want to apply late. I know the chances of people like getting into medical school the later they apply are less, and so I was like, I'm just gonna have to wait it out. And so I graduated, went back home to San Antonio, and I was like, what am I gonna do now? Like I'm used to just being always like busy and doing things, and I was like, I have nothing to do. I literally have nothing to do. And so I started applying for jobs. I decided that I wanted to do things that were like, I knew I wasn't going to be studying. I was like, I'm not going to, I don't have any classes. I'm not going to put myself through other courses over my gap year. What if instead I find a job that kind of gives me more exposure to medicine? So I actually looked for jobs, and then I ended up getting hired as a medical scribe. So I worked as a medical scribe during my gap year. And then I was like, so it was like an 8 to 5, job. And then I was like, this isn't enough. I need more. So I also started work. I worked as a tennis coach during my gap year as well. So I honestly, I loved it. I loved that year. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't change anything. I would leave it the way it is because I learned so much from both of those experiences. Um, for example, medical scribing, it allowed me to learn how like clinics are ran. So I worked with a family medicine doctor, which was what I was interested in to begin with. So I was like, this is perfect. um, I got to learn about the clinical aspect of it. I got to get familiar with like some of the more common diseases and a lot of the terminology. It's really come in handy now that I'm here in medical school. Like I hear some of these abbreviations and I'm like, oh, like I got that. But so yeah, so it's helped me in that aspect. Even whenever we were like practicing to do like physical exams and history taking and things like that, I got to see the doctor that I work with. I got to see him do it so many times that I like by default kind of like learned it too. So that was really cool. It helped me a lot with that. Um, it also just like allowed me to have like a really good relationship with a physician. And he was like, he served as a mentor for me. He gave me a lot of good advice before coming into medical school because he knew that I was applying. And so he was like, do this, but also don't do this. Like, don't make the mistakes that I make. And so I really appreciated that. And then working as a tennis coach was just like the cherry on top, man. That was, I played tennis. I've been playing tennis since I was in high school. I coached before. So I had been coaching my summers during the summers. And so it was just like returning now and staying there throughout the school year rather than just coming during the summer and leaving. So I was getting paid to just like have fun and teach kids. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. So I, I made the most. I think when it comes to gap years, if you have a goal, if there's something that you want to do during that year, I would say go for it. Like if there's a research opportunity that pops up that you're really interested in, if there's a job that you want to do that you're really interested in, I would encourage you to do that. I think gap year, I think now we're starting to see a lot of people deviate from just like being a normal, like straight medical school I mean, college to medical school student. There's a lot more non-traditional students now. I was surprised at how many non-traditional students there are in our class. And so I think if there's other experiences that you think you might want to have, I would say really consider it and think about going into that because honestly once you start medical school it's medical school from then on, you know, like it's being a doctor. Like you go medical school, you go to your residency. If you're going to do a fellowship, you do a fellowship, and then you like go straight into practicing. So if there's any research opportunities that you want to do, if you want to get involved with like policy making in the government, or if you want to get like a job, something that else that you feel like it's needed or supplemental that you want to have, I would say do it. I also really like the fact that I wasn't my schedules were very flexible. So I was applying and I interviewed during my gap year, that 1 year that I had. So there was no stress of me like having to miss class because I was flying or I was like driving over to like Houston or I was driving over to Galveston or to Lubbock. So there was no pressure on that aspect because I honestly thinking that like my hat goes out to all those seniors that are like in the interview process as they're still taking classes. I think that's like very exhausting. If you can get through it, like kudos to you. But I love that I didn't have to worry about that. You know, like I would just drive in, spend the weekend, and then get back, and I would be fine. I know there were people that were like getting late to their interviews because I was like, oh, I had a test that I had to take, and like then I like flew in, and then now like go through the interview, and then it's like, all right, gotta go back because I have something else that's happening. So it's like I think the stigma behind the gap year, like I think slowly it's going away because more and more people are doing it. So I would just say if you have something cool that you want to do, an opportunity that pops up, I would recommend it. I think it's a good idea.
Do you think that the gap year, well, how do you think the gap year have might have affected your you in the application cycle? Do you think it might have helped you or hurt you? Like, how do you think? Like, did it give you more experiences that you could talk about in interviews? You know, that kind of thing. Do you think
Yeah,
it helped you?
yeah.
Okay.
So that's a good question, dude. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, it definitely helped. So I applied in May. I was already work. I was no, I wasn't working yet, but I was uh sending out applications for working. And so you're allowed to put like what are your future plans if you're taking a gap year. So I was like medical scribing, doing all these things. And so once it got to the interviews, it really helped me because they would ask about it, or they would just like ask questions, and then I would bring it up into the conversation because I thought it was really relevant. It's related to medicine. So I would get to talk about it, and I think if anything, it strengthened my application. It helped me have these stories that I could share personally from like the medical scribing perspective, getting to see these patients and getting to see all the cases. Those were things that I was able to bring up during the interview. So I think it helped me. I don't think it hurt me. I don't think medical schools would look at someone taking a gap year and see that as a negative. I think if you take a gap year and then don't do anything, but even then, I don't really think they care much, as long as everything else in your application is good. Um, but yeah, I would say my advice would be, if you're gonna do a gap year, make it a productive one. Do something that you can talk about during your interviews and things like that. Don't I wouldn't say take a gap year just so you can like travel the world. I mean, you can probably like you can do that and then still make it like relatable and still bring it into your interviews, I feel. So it's just about being able to talk about those opportunities and those things that you are doing. Because I mean, when you're interviewing, you're still in your gap year. Some people take more than one gap year so they can talk about the things that they did or the things that they are doing in the moment. So it's pretty cool.
But yeah, I guess to end things off a little bit, um, if you could go back a few years to when you were an undergrad, maybe if you could talk to yourself, a few years back, what are some things that you would tell yourself about this whole process, about med school? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really trying not to sound like super cliche, because
Oh,
people are gonna see I'm gonna say stuff and then people are gonna be like rolling their eyes.
no, don't
But
worry about it. Don't
but
worry.
really, it's like believe in yourself. I know personally, I had a lot of issues with confidence before going into medical school. Um, I because I'm a first generation college student, because I didn't have that many connections, I didn't have money, I didn't have all these things. It was hard for me to like be super confident about who I was. I had a really good grades. I had a really good application, but I still didn't feel. I felt like maybe like this wasn't for me. Maybe I wasn't gonna. I honestly didn't think I was gonna get in. I only applied because I was like, if I don't apply, I'm gonna like 10, 20 years from now, I'm gonna hate myself for it. I'm gonna be like, what if? And I didn't want to have any what ifs. So I was like, I'm just gonna apply. If I don't get in, then I'll just do something else. Like I'll find something else to do with my life. And so I didn't think it, so it was a surprise to me when I like started receiving all these interviews, and when I like pre-matched to schools and things like that. Um, Not to flex or anything, but that was like a big surprise to me. And it really helped me with my confidence. So now I'm at a point where like I really believe in myself and my abilities. So if I had to go back to when I was in undergrad, I think part of the reason why I didn't decide, I feel like I always kind of knew that I wanted to pursue medicine in a way, but I was very scared because of like the time commitment with all these years that you have to go through for education, because of the money, all the loans, and then just because of the competitive aspect of it. So those things kept me from deciding on going into medicine, or deciding that I wanted to pursue medicine until very later on in my college career, until like my junior year of college. So I feel like if I would have believed in myself a little bit more, I would have started sooner. But honestly, like I said, I wouldn't change anything, because pushing the decision into my junior year allowed me to do um, my gap year, which allowed me to be a medical scribe, which allowed me to go and learn all these things. Then it allowed me to get into this medical school at this time. So I'm a big believer. I'm like, everything happens for a reason. We all have a purpose in life. Again, super cliche stuff, but I believe in all that stuff. So I think I would just tell myself, like, believe in yourself. Also, don't be afraid to like make connections. Go out there, introduce yourself to people. Um, you're gonna learn. Everybody will learn eventually, if you guys haven't figured it out yet. But everything in life, it's about like who you know, and where you are, and what connections you're making. So I think I was a little bit too shy at first to go out there and reach out to doctors, reach out to people. I was very lucky that I had a family friend that was a nurse, who was able to introduce me to a doctor who I eventually got the chance to shadow. But then once I had him, he introduced me to another doctor who then I got to shadow. And then he also introduced me to a clinic that I was able to like volunteer at during my gap year. So it's like once you start getting in there and start meeting people, it's just about making connections. Mentorship is really important. So making sure that you have people that you're able to reach out to. If you're a minority student, if you're um, I know it gets a little bit trickier, and it's a little bit harder to be able to find mentors and people you can talk to. I know I 100% relate. I went through all of that. So we're trying to expand on those things. So actually, we have a program now that is starting here at McGovern with the Frontera de Salud. It's an organization, and they're basically trying to help fill in that gap undergrad students who are pre-med, who are minority students, who might be struggling to get that kind of mentorship that they need.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah, well, thank you so much. That's all I have for you today. Thanks. I'm sure everyone had a great time listening to what you had to say, your advice. But yeah, that's all I have for today. Bye, guys.
bye guys. Thank you so much for your time.